Hailing from the Jersey Shore and raised as athletes, the Airey Bros have always shared a passion for physical culture, athletic performance, and human optimization, always striving to be the strongest versions of themselves, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Along the way, they've met some pretty amazing humans and have had some pretty epic adventures. The intention of Airey Bros Radio is to showcase these amazing people and the impact that they've had on them, and to share tips, tricks, and hacks so that you can win each day, every day.
You're listening to Airey Bros Radio. Be there or be square, because it's all killer, no filler.
You don't get to explore how bright you are in your light until you're willing to explore your full darkness. That the debauchery was part of the big lesson. Like, a lot of what you know today came through the exploration of such darkness. Don't worry about having the full plan ahead of you. You just have to start. And when you start, what you're ready for next will show up. And you have to trust that. And that's part of the spiritual journey, is faith. Working with your inner child is how you can make quantum leaps in shifting your timeline now. Nothing other than just completely bearing my soul and just saying, I need someone. I literally felt angel wings wrap around me. You've got to ask, and you've got to be open. You got to be open to them communicating with you in any kind of way. But if there's any way that we as a society can stop shaming one another, it's the lowest frequency out there. The way it moved in and out of the tree, and I knew instantly it was the Pleiadians. They'd come to me in non-corporeal form. This is Nicole Frolick, and you're listening to Airey Bros Radio. I think the podcast really was something that just started to give me a lot of confidence around my voice, because I finally got to talk about all of the things I love talking about. And of course, you know, when you don't have that many people around you to have those conversations, you're not as fluent in just being able to speak naturally about that stuff. And so that just really opened up the doors for me in a lot of different ways. And it was a really big launch pad that I did not anticipate. That I had no idea. Honestly, when we started it, because it was just me and a couple friends, we're like, let's just have some weird conversations and let people listen in. Like, that was really just the premise of it.
So Nicole, tell us about your journey. How did you get into all this stuff? Are you originally from Colorado or?
No, I'm from Canada,
Okay.
Toronto, Canada. And I grew up there. Lived in a couple different places throughout my life. Lived in Switzerland when I was 16. I did an exchange program, which really kind of opened me up to, I think, wanting to see the world, and gave me a much deeper perspective on everything that was out there, because that was back in the day when the internet really wasn't too big of a thing. So really the only way you understood what was in the world was like through encyclopedias and things like that. So, which I'm probably really dating myself as I say that out loud, but, and then I've also spent some time in the Cayman Islands. And so I've lived in a lot of different places. I've traveled a lot, and it's just something that's a part of me. I just love exploring. I think it's the exploration of meeting new people, getting to see different cultures, understanding new belief systems. It's just all part of it.
Very cool.
Well, you're in the safe circle, because Rich and I both grew up on encyclopedias and dictionaries, so we can totally relate.
Awesome. Yeah.
I'm at that point in my life now where I can honestly say back in my day.
Yeah. Also, there's one of the things that I loved about the traveling was I learned so much about myself. I had to put myself in a lot of uncomfortable positions, when meaning like just really testing my own character and having to be in foreign countries where you don't speak the language and trying to figure things out. I backpacked by myself for a period of time. And I think it just really kind of, there's a lot there that shapes who you are, your character. You get to explore like a lot of like, who am I exactly? And so I thought that was one of the really big benefits of traveling.
So in that traveling, is that where you kind of got that spiritual connection? And is that where that came out, or have you always had that? Where did that kind of seed get planted?
I think I've always had it to some degree. I was raised Catholic, and I hated going to church on Sundays, mostly because I was like, I'd rather just be home watching cartoons. But also I just didn't enjoy I think a lot of it had to do with our pastor too, like our priest. He wasn't that great. Because I've been to some ceremonies in churches, and I was like, wow, this is like a completely different experience. I wish I had this growing up. It would have been a completely different experience. But obviously, this was mine to have. And I just knew that there were certain things within the religion that just didn't make any sense to me, which was all of the fear around, like, that is used to kind of control people, to keep them in line. And I knew that's not what God was about. So when I was in high school, I took a world religion class, and that's when I started to, after being a bit of a, I don't know if I can swear here.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. After kind of being a little bit of a shit stir, I challenged the teacher on what she was teaching us. And I told her, I said, you're teaching us like we're children, like our minds aren't stupid, like start teaching us real stuff. And so I got kicked out of the class for a week for that, and sent to the library, where she made me read all these books on world religion, which I thought was great. I was like, this is way more interesting than what you were teaching me. So I started like reading up on Hinduism and Buddhism, and I really gravitated. I really enjoyed both, but I gravitated more towards Buddhism. And so I think that in itself, because I was really interested in the whole idea of meditation and really centering yourself in that state of peace. And I think when I was 17, I just started meditating on my own without realizing I was doing it. I remember it started kind of just listening to Gregorian chants. And I would do that in the bath or while I was just lying in bed. And I just realized I'm being transported somewhere else. Like, I'm not in my body anymore. And so that kind of opened me up. And then really early in my age, I started, like, I think it was 2021, I found a naturopath, and she really opened me up to past life regression, how to work with visions of light, to breathe that into the body. A lot of different things were opened up to me at a very young age, relatively speaking. And so I was always into it, and I explored it, but I also had a very dark side of me too. I was really into partying and drinking. I never really got into the drugs, but I drank a lot, and I wanted to just have fun and party. And so I had this really big kind of push pull kind of tug of war within inside of me, that there was a part of me that really wanted to really explore this spiritual aspect, because I knew it was such a deep part of me. But then there was a part of me that felt like I'd have to give up having fun, which is totally not the case at all. But I was also, the way I was using fun was as an escape. And there was a lot I was escaping from at that time. So it was constant kind of going back and forth. So I was kind of like on the seesaw of really exploring my spirituality more, but then also just wanting to be debaucherous.
Well, again, you're in the right place, because we are recovering Catholics, and we've had our fair share of Catholic guilt as well. And I've gotten into some debauchery, maybe myself a little bit more than the other guy over there, but it's that yin and yang of everything is a balance, whether it's work and life, play, everything in moderation. That's what I've learned.
I'm sure you would agree then that the debauchery was part of the big lesson. Like, a lot of what you know today came through the exploration of such darkness. You don't get to explore how bright you are in your light until you're willing to explore your full darkness. And I think my 20s had a lot of darkness in them, and even my early 30s too. But I'm eternally grateful. I wouldn't do it any differently. I mean, in hindsight, I'm like, oh, I wish I knew this then, but really, ultimately, I would never be where I am today if I had not done that. And I think that's one of the things that I've been talking a little bit more lately to people is, don't be afraid of your darkness, and don't be afraid of how almost blackout it can get, because if you're willing to experience that, and I'm not saying that's what you should do, but I'm just saying if it's naturally part of your path and that's where you are, you shouldn't hold shame or judgment or guilt around that. It's you exploring your darkness, because only in the darkest part of us, that light has the ability to hold higher light quotient. So that means that your light can actually shine brighter. And it's important to have that contrast.
Yeah, that's a very interesting thought. I'm sure you have it too when you talk to certain people. They might think because you're a spiritual person and you tap into certain things that you live better, or they put you in a certain place and they're like, oh, well, I'm not like you or something like that. And I try to come from a place where it's like, hey, you got to do your thing because I did my thing to get to where I'm at right now. And if you don't do that, then you might not get there. And something that I had some learning with this summer was some like sacred contracts, and it helped me kind of wrap my head around difficult people I've had throughout my life, where it was like, oh, I needed that person. I needed that person to kind of get me over that hump.
It's so true. I mean, I even look at some of the most painful relationships I've had, but it was because I needed to learn certain things about myself that I wasn't willing to stick up. I wasn't willing to stick up for myself, or wasn't willing to see my own worth. And literally they were just trying to push me to my edge so I would finally be ready to see my worth. And you need people like that. And that's why it's like, I know this is a little controversial and some people will be like, no. But the devil has its place in our reality. And when I say the devil, I mean, like, there's a devil within all of us, like it's everywhere. And as much as we want to say, remove the devil from our reality, whether it's people within power in our world, companies that are doing wrong things, whatever it might be, the reality is that they're there to teach us our own ability to be sovereign, to be empowered, to know what we're worth, to finally have a voice, to stick up for ourselves. And we need that contrast. And so it plays a role, and no one ever wants to truly be that, but it's important to not reject it, because it's very much a part of this reality and how we learn and why we come to this particular planet, to explore our soul's growth and learn at the capacity that we're learning in these lifetimes.
Talking about why we're here, I think what's gotten me onto this journey and started probably 10 or 15 years ago is discovering or trying to find what the purpose, what is my purpose. And I think, we always talk about our purpose is to spread purpose and sharing those life lessons with people. And sometimes, I'm 11 years older than Jimmy, so I've gone down a couple different roads and try to tell him about different potholes and stuff. But sometimes he's got to find those potholes himself. But I think at the end of the day, we're here to live, we're here to learn and share what we've learned with other people that are in need.
Yeah, and it's important just to be that support system, that he knows that you're there whenever he hits that really uncomfortable period where it's like, oh shit, what am I doing now? How did I get here?
I'd like to say I listen better these days than I did maybe 10 years ago. Again, it goes back to like what we were saying before. It's like you need to make those mistakes, and so someone can write that out for you, and it's not going to be what you need. So I think to kind of get back to what you were talking about, where you said you were having that push pull of, kind of living in, lack of a better word, that 3D world, and struggling to get in that 5D world. What was kind of that push? Was it the podcast and having those interesting kind of conversations that kind of kept on pulling you into the light?
No, it wasn't. It was, I had been living in the Cayman Islands for a while, and I had built myself a business there, basically doing massage therapy, yoga, personal training, nutritional consultations, things like that, which I'd been doing for the majority of my career at that point. And I was doing very well. I didn't have to, I could work 20 hours a week, and I was able to travel a lot. My clients didn't care. I was making I was getting to the point where it's 5 figures a month. And, I was like, okay, I'm finally doing it. But at the same breath, I was also like, I'm missing something. I'm not doing the thing I knew I wanted to do when I was 25, which was coaching and speaking, even though I was deathly scared of speaking in public. And I've always been wanting to do coaching, and it's more along the lines of from a spiritual perspective. But I always delayed it because I thought I needed some sort of credential behind me. And I'm like, well, I know I'm not going back to school. I can't stand the education system. I don't want to take someone else's course. I'm very much someone who just likes to do things my way. And when I say that, I don't mean that from like it's my way or the highway, but I like to explore my own path. I don't want to explore someone else's path and then take on their stuff. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just my own personality. And so finally, I think I got to a point where I said, I am constantly already doing the life coaching thing. I've been doing it pretty much since I started massaging when I was a massage therapist. And when I decided I left the island, and he was like, I need to figure out a new plan. Because I knew I had to leave there. So I just got up, left the whole business, just walked away, knowing that there was something more for me, but I just didn't know how I was going to do it. And then I just decided, let me just publish my book, because I had written in my book. And then I said, well, maybe I'll do speaking, maybe I'll try coaching. And I just said, well, let's just start with a YouTube channel. And so I started with my YouTube channel. And then right around that time is when I started the podcast. And then it's just, here's the thing. You don't almost always have the plan ahead of you. You just need to start following the nudge. And I needed to start doing a few things I was really scared of doing and holding myself back on. I didn't know what was going to stick, what wasn't. And there's a few things I did that didn't stick, but without taking the action, I was never able to actually get to this point. So around that, when I left the islands, which was like in 2016, I finally started to get really serious about my meditation practice. I had met a Reiki healer who got me, she's like, you need to do inner child healing. And I'm like, what's that? And so she's like, oh, just connect with your inner child, you'll know. And I did. And my inner child was so smart. Like she still is. I shouldn't say it in a past tense. She's super smart. And she opened up to me and guided me through a lot of my meditations and started showing me all the stuff I had been avoiding, the things I didn't want to know about myself, the pain, where all the pain was and from the childhood. And so she kind of taught me how to do inner child work. And then it just became part of me. And it just seemed so natural. And so I thought this is how everyone experienced it. Like when it must be so easy to connect with your inner child. But I quickly learned that it's not the case for a lot of people. And so I knew that that was eventually something that I had to start with. And it kind of came about in a really interesting way. There was someone that I cared for very deeply, and he was kind of coming to me for some guidance. And I said to him, I feel like your inner child wants to come through, and I think I just need to channel that if it's okay. And he said, yeah, sure. And I had never done that before. I'd never channeled anyone's inner child, but I think because I was so connected to this person, it was a lot easier for me. And it kind of opened the door. And from that point on, all of a sudden someone else asked me, can you channel my inner child? I'm like, okay. And so I just started tapping in, and I realized I got to start helping people in this area. It's like part of my thing. And so all of these things just started evolving. And like one day before even that happened, I was like, oh, I'm really interested in learning tarot. And I was like, let me just buy a couple tarot decks and start playing with them. And I'm like, okay. And I was like, you know what, let me just start doing them live. And I literally throw myself into the fire where I know people are now going to be watching me, and I have to come up with some kind of response, but it's like, it just flowed. I just allowed myself to kind of tune into my intuition and let it flow. And I think we need to throw ourselves into the fire a little bit. I'm not saying do it so haphazardly, but you need to start taking some risks on yourself, and you need to start following some of the actions that are needed by the nudges that you're getting from your soul without worrying about like, is this the right thing? Should I be doing this or should I be doing that? Like, you just got to start doing something.
Okay, Nicole, so there's a lot there that I want to talk about. You mentioned inner child, you mentioned channeling the inner child, you mentioned tarot reading. So I'm going to try to go back and we'll knock them off as we go here. So I guess the first thing to start off with is, you said you started talking to your inner child, and a lot of the work I'm doing and a lot of the stuff I'm listening to, you hear about people talking about your higher conscious or your higher self. Is there a difference between the two, or are they the same thing?
Between your inner child and your higher self?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Big difference.
Can you explain that to me, please?
Oh, sure. Of course. So your higher self is kind of like, how when you play a video game, you're controlling the navigation, like you're controlling your avatar, basically. It's almost like your higher self is in a sense like that, but you also have the free will down here to do it. So they can kind of see things and they know things that you might not know down here. And so they've got a lot of wisdom that they can impart to you that has been kind of accumulated over lifetimes, right? And not just this lifetime on Earth and your lifetimes on Earth, but other planets and all that kind of stuff. So your higher self has access to all of that. Your inner child is the part of you that experienced a lot of the subconscious programming over the first, well, for sure the first 7 years of your life, but it's the inner child can also be like, 10, 11, 12 years old. It could even be a teenager at some point. I actually sometimes would have a meditation where my child self would show up like 5, 6, 7, and then my teenage self would show up. And it'd be a very different energy between my inner child and my inner teenager, so to speak. And the inner child holds a lot of the keys to your deeper awakening, to your ability to connect in all the ways that so many people want to when you're really exploring your intuitive abilities, your psychic abilities, exploring other realms, your connection to everything. Your inner child really holds some keys to that, but they also hold a lot of keys to your ultimate happiness. And they have been likely rejected, abandoned, dismissed. And we forget about that part of us, but it's still very much alive within us. And it's basically because it rules the subconscious mind, because it's the subconscious mind was programmed through the first 7 years of our life. It's basically responsible for making most of our decisions in our adult life, believe it or not. There are some things where our conscious mind will override certain things, but we work on autopilot 95% of the time. So working with your inner child is how you can make quantum leaps in shifting your timeline now. If you go back in time and revisit certain memories with your inner child, or even just start talking to your inner child through meditation and all that, you can start healing some of the vibration that she or he is still holding that is still present in you today. And as soon as that gets healed, it's like it's pulled out of your full timeline, which means certain things that you're facing or about to face are completely removed out of your timeline as well, or they're altered or transmuted in a really good way. So I've found that working with the inner child is one of the most rapid ways to make changes in your timeline immediately. So working with the inner child is a very delicate process too. It's very scary. Most people are very nervous when they have an inner child session with me. I think I have to start saying this ahead of time with clients that they need to have Kleenex around them when we start. But almost always, as soon as I kind of get some messages from the inner child, it's just tears coming. And it's because there's a resonance of understanding a truth that's been hidden for so long. And there's so much shame and guilt that we've buried around this, like that once we kind of remove those frequencies, and those frequencies, when we look at the consciousness scale, they are the lowest. There's death, then there's shame sitting at 20, and then there's guilt sitting at 30. Fear is at 100. So fear is actually a better frequency to be having other than shame and guilt. Shame and guilt is the worst. This is why I always say to people, do not shame anyone. Just don't, if you feel like it might be like a knee-jerk reaction or how you were kind of programmed as throughout your childhood growing up, your parents may have done it to you. But if there's any way that we as a society can stop shaming one another, it's the lowest frequency out there. It's the one just above death. So it really kills the enterprise of the spirit within. And so when we start to face that shame or guilt within us, we start to remove a really heavy kind of blanketed energy that's been with us that we didn't even realize. And some of the most beautiful breakthroughs have happened. And when I see a client like have that look in their eyes where it's like an aha moment, like, oh my God, all of it starts to make sense now. And I know why I choose this, or I now know why this keeps happening to me. It's such a rewarding feeling an honor to be part of someone's journey and witness that for them. One of the other things that because my inner child was so good at this, was taking me on journeys in my own meditation. Now what I do with my clients is the hardest part is no one knows how to really reconnect with their inner child. And so I do like a guided reconnection with them in a session, if it's a one-on-one session. And if it's in my online course, I've created a meditation that connects you to that. So it's super powerful. And I think people underestimate, well, one, we're all time travelers. If you can go back in time in your own memories, you're time traveling. If you want to go back and if you want to go into your future, you're time traveling. Like you can do it consciously, like in your waking life. And I think we underestimate our own powers as humans and how effective it is to actually go back in time, so to speak, and really tune into that emotional vibration that is still permeating your present life now, heal it, and it immediately removes it from this timeline now. That was a lot. Sorry, guys.
No, it was
No,
amazing.
it's what we needed.
Yeah. So, connecting with your inner child, was it something that, I mean, you mentioned the Reiki healer. Was it something that you had nothing, it was not on your radar at all before you met that person?
No, I didn't even know what inner child was.
Okay.
I hadn't even heard of it.
And so then you mentioned you started talking to your inner child when you were meditating.
So let me tell you about my first encounter with my inner child. One, I think I'm blessed with having really good visions. I get a good DMT drop from my meditation practice naturally. So when I do mushrooms, it's amazing. But so when I was in meditation, I kind of let me just kind of called her, let her know I'm here and I want to meet up with her. And of course, instantly we met up in the forest, and the forest has always been my safe place. Like I love the forest. As a kid, we had one in our backyard, a massive forest on this hill. And some of my happiest moments were there. And so we met up in the forest, and I remember there was a big pile of leaves in this kind of cleared area of the forest. And so she kind of showed up, and I remember noticing oh, wow, I remember that hairstyle. And oh, I remember that outfit. And oh, wow. And I remember always feeling like an ugly kid. I always thought I was an ugly kid. And when I looked at her, it was the first time I looked at her and I thought, wow, you are really cute. And that actually started to bring up a lot of emotions for me, because I don't think I'd ever seen myself that way. And, she came over to me and we kind of talked a little bit, but it was more let's just have some fun. So in the meditation, we're jumping in the leaves because I loved doing that as a kid too. And then I was like, okay, let's go look along the river and look for frogs. And because I was really into frogs as a kid. And then we started climbing rocks and trees, and we ended up climbing into this tree and sitting on a really big bough. And I had my back against the tree, and our legs were hanging off this big branch. And she was kind of sitting in front of me looking away. And we were just kind of sitting there, and we were just kind of casually chatting. And then all of a sudden she turns around and she looks over her shoulder at me and she goes, "Are we okay?" And I said, of course we're okay. What do you mean? And she goes, "Are we okay now? In the future?" And I was like, oh. And I had to tell him yeah, no, we're okay. You have nothing to worry about. And she said, "Do I do something bad?" And as soon as she said that to me, it was the floodgates opened up, and I don't know what that triggered within me. At the time, I didn't understand it fully, but I knew that it was a huge program within me to always be the good girl, and that I felt like certain things happened to me because I was bad. And which later on, it didn't happen right away. It took a couple of years for me she started trying to reveal to me that I was sexually abused when I was 5 or 6. And that kind of left an imprint of, did I do something wrong? Did I do something to deserve that kind of thing? Why would that happen to someone who was good? And so that just opened the door. And so I started to realize that there was a lot of power if I just let her open up and say things to me that truly are so simple, not even a lot of words. And it's the voice of the child speaking to you, speaking that did we do something bad? I would never talk like that as an adult, but when she opened up to me, like that's how it came through. And so we eventually got off the tree and went into this clearing because we found a fire. And there was like a bonfire. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, why would there be a bonfire that's unattended in the forest? And so there was like some big logs around it. And so we kind of sat down, and as we're sitting there staring to the fire, out of the corner of my eye, I saw this figure emerge from the bushes. And it was like a cross between like a Mayan, the person looked very Mayan and very like tribal. And so he came out and he introduced himself, and his name was Michael. And I understood that he was, in many ways, I have a big, strong Mayan remembrance in this particular lifetime. I connect with the Mayan culture a lot, and I've had some incredible experiences in some of their sacred land. That in a way, I knew it was kind of Archangel Michael coming to me in that form. And she loved him. Like, she felt so safe with him. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to come out of meditation because I gotta do some other stuff. And I said, are you okay if I leave you here with him? And she said, yes. And he gave me some messages, and I said, okay. I was like, as long as I know you're with someone while I'm away, but just know that, just call on me if you need anything, and I'm here, and I'll connect with you again really soon. And then I left. But it was just really interesting because she really opened me up to a lot more of my spirit guides, what was possible through meditation, what was possible through my own healing process here in this body. It was incredible.
You were not kidding about that DMT drop on your meditation, Nicole. That is an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that and mentioning that kind of psychedelic experience. That was something I kind of wanted to talk to you about, because I've been listening to some of your other podcasts, and I've heard you mention that you did some ayahuasca this year and some mushrooms. And I've never done a inner child's healing, but I've done iboga. And that is a lot of like, yeah, very big. A lot of Akashic records type, and a lot of inner child stuff. So a lot of stuff that you said, I can relate, but I had the psychedelics. So with your psychedelic use and knowing that you're connected to your guides and all your spiritual energies and powers, how does that work when you take psychedelic trips, or how did that work with ayahuasca? I'm very interested on how that goes when you're that connected and already having these experiences before you're taking any kind of substance.
Yeah, my ayahuasca experience was very visceral and just a full detox purge. So I actually almost had zero visions during my ayahuasca ceremony. But my request to ayahuasca was to clear my heart so I could love deeper. And when I purged, which I don't know if either of you have done ayahuasca.
Yes,
ma'am.
Okay.
Rich
That's like, if you think throwing up now, like without ayahuasca is like a different ball game. Like it's totally, now it's just like, oh, I could do that, no problem. I used to hate throwing up. I mean, I still don't like it, but after doing ayahuasca, it was just, it was like 100 times. I didn't even know it was possible to purge like that. And it felt like everything that was coming out of me was coming out of my heart. And I did see some black clouds at that time. And luckily the shaman, he was Colombian. He was very good at, like, he would started massaging my shoulders, and he's, doing their thing that they do. And it helped relax me, release like a lot. And so that I didn't really get anything spirit guide wise. However, psilocybin is a completely different experience. At least for me, it was. And I also think because I did the psilocybin journey 1 week after my ayahuasca, I was completely clean. So the ayahuasca just had this the psilocybin had this blank slate to work with within me. And I remember I saw my DNA like spiraling in front of me, and in between, like, how they show you in like textbooks and stuff like that, that there's like the bars of like the codes of the DNA.
The double helix.
Yeah, like the double helix, like, but like those ladder rungs.
Ladder, yeah.
in those were all faces of female ancestors. And I was seeing Mayan and Egyptian and all kinds of different stuff in there. And I was like, wow. So that was really cool. And then I connect a lot with the feline ETs.
The Hathors?
More so like the Lyrans and yeah, like those kind of lion being type. I remember one time I was guiding a meditation with some people in my alchemy program. And this blue, almost like jaguar-like being that was lit up, like it was lit up blue and almost on fire, but not like it was glowing blue. And it just came in and was just kind of like dancing in our hearts. And it kept just doing circles within our hearts. And I was like, what is this? Like, this is so amazing. And that wasn't even on psilocybin. That was just me like doing like the guided meditation and seeing that kind of come in. But I connect a lot with the felines. And it's funny, I've been told a lot, I look like a lion sometimes. Like some people have told me like, you know, you look like a lion. But I don't know what it is. So I have had a couple psilocybin journeys this year. And every time a big lion being or a couple of them come in, one of them in my psilocybin journey was completely white with the most, I want to say, what's that? Cyan blue eyes. They were so piercing. And another feline that felt, it may actually have been Hathor because it felt very Egyptian, had come in, and they didn't say anything, so to speak, but it was more of like the energy transference was there. So one I remember was in a, this is going to sound so weird. It was in a spaceship hovering over my friend's house where we did a psilocybin drop together. She did her own journey in her own room, and I just kind of was in her family room space, living room. And I remember during that, I saw like there was a spaceship hovering over us, and the cat was just like hanging out like cats kind of do, like on a ledge with one leg hanging out. It was just like there to protect like the energy while we were on our journey. So I get that kind of stuff when I'm doing psilocybin.
That's very interesting. And I know you do some channeling with some other star seeds and stuff like that. And you've mentioned past life regressions. Are you an ET in a past life? Are you a star seed?
Aren't
like
any
that?
of us? I think most of us are.
Right on. I was just curious if you ever had any of those encounters in a regression or anything like that.
Not in a, okay, no, wait. Not in a regression, but I did do hypnotherapy once, and it was actually for an episode on my podcast. I've never been hypnotized, so to speak. And I think it's because we all have this idea of what we think hypnotherapy is. Like you go completely under, like you see them on stage, like, you know, they like make you quack like a duck, or I don't know, like it was nothing like that. But I did go to another planet. But before I did go to that, it was like a water planet that I remember the sky was purple and pink, and the water was almost like a grayish purple. And I ended up going down below into the water, because that's where a lot of the life was. And I met up with this woman who had this almost like ruby amulet around her neck. And I remember kind of as I saw her in this cavern underwater, I was walking towards her, and all these dolphins came in and started creating like an arch for me to walk through as I like came to her. And before that, I saw the Pleiadians. It was very distinct. And I remember just crying because I knew I was with family. So I think Pleiadians was probably my last starseed life before coming to Earth. I think it is for many of us because it's the closest star system. So a lot of us come through the Pleiades to get to Earth. But I know, hey, I think I was a reptilian here in one of my lifetimes, but it was to understand the the depth of their, like, to really understand how they work and understand like why they do things the way they do. I have a reptilian guide who's very gentle and very compassionate, very feminine energy, but very strong. And there's apparently like a very, not all, like anything, not all reptilians are bad, but I think the ones that are kind of using this planet as their playground right now, obviously don't come with the best intentions for humanity. Like they just think we're like ants, like we're scum kind of thing, like we're some kind of disease. So I think, and that's why it's just so interesting is some of the lifetimes that we choose to take on. I'm sorry, I'm going on all over the place here, but sometimes we take on lifetimes, and this could just even be a human lifetime where you maybe, I don't know, you become the murderer, and you feel horrible for doing that, like later on in life, and you have all this guilt and shame, but there's something that we need to understand from that perspective, or what it means to live that life, to do what we're doing now. And I know I had a lifetime, probably like, I want to say it was Japan or possibly even Korea, where I ran an opium house. Like I was, my father was a complete drug addict, and I ran the business, I ran the house, and I chose that lifetime to understand the human desire, or not even necessarily desire, but this pull to lose everything in life over an addiction. Like, like what is it that pulls people into addiction? What is it, like willing to just see people throw their lives away? And I would allow it to happen, and I would just basically serve this to people and do that. And it's crazy because I now, in this lifetime, really guided to use psilocybin in a lot of my healing sessions, like going forward, like not right now, but in the near future. But of course, there's a huge respect and sacredness that I have today with like the medicine and understanding you just don't give it to anyone. And it's not just for like escaping. And that lifetime, I think I needed to understand, sorry, this is like a download I'm getting right now, is I needed to understand the importance and the responsibility around offering certain things to people that maybe they're not ready to have, or that it's not good for them. Not everyone should be doing ayahuasca or psilocybin or any other kind of drug. It doesn't, just because it works for someone or someone's okay with it, doesn't mean it's going to be the right thing for someone else. And I think it's important that everyone knows who they are deeply and fundamentally before they are engaging with certain substances that are absolutely mind altering. And it's not that they're, I think you will always be met by the consciousness of the plant, but through the consciousness that you hold when you're engaging it. So, and I think that's one of the really interesting things about plant medicine is that if you're in a really dark space, you're probably going to have a really dark journey. But if you're really, really willing to surrender and your intentions are pure, you're going to have an opening experience. And it doesn't mean that you won't see some dark stuff, but your approach to all of that, like I said in the beginning, we need to understand that we need to know our own darkness, and we need to be comfortable with that.
I also think too, like you said, it's not necessarily for everyone. It's also, in a sense, I found that, what may have been something at one point isn't necessarily something for me anymore, or very sparingly. So I'm curious, you mentioned the Colombian shaman. Jimmy and I worked with 2 Colombian shaman. Did you go to Colombia, or was that something you did in Colorado?
No, I did in Mexico.
Okay.
And I had to search high and low for a shaman that I felt connected to, or felt like wasn't in it just for the money, or felt like they were going to be responsible with the brew they were brewing. I wanted to make sure, because I wanted to know that there was care taken in the brew that I was going to be consuming. And just after I finally surrendered and said, you know what, maybe I'm not meant to do ayahuasca here. Like I thought it was going to be part of my plan, and maybe it's not. And I had been like on the diet. So I have no meat, no dairy, no coffee, no alcohol, none of that. And I said, you know what? Screw it. I'm on vacation. I'm just going to go eat like, what did I have? I went and got a margarita and I had like pork tacos or something. Literally within 30 minutes of doing that, my shaman came through. Like someone found the shaman and they're like, oh, check this person out. They're like doing a ceremony this Friday. And I looked and I'm like, oh yeah. And I talked to them and they're like, it was perfect. So, but that's just also like, sometimes we really fully need to let go in order for the thing to come in.
Did you have
But
any?
yeah.
Did you have any adverse reactions from your margarita and your
No,
pork tacos? You think maybe that caused more of a purge?
no.
No.
Okay.
And
It was truly an unconscious purge. Mm-hmm.
And with your psilocybin, have you worked with any sort of? Are you doing that by yourself or with friends or other people? Or are you working with a shaman in that regard?
No, I mean, I'm working just with myself and friends. I had a friend who guided me on my first one, and he's been doing that for a while. And so I started learning through him and observing what he does. And so that's been kind of really helpful to me. But at the same time, I know, like when I talk about my Mayan, I had a past life as a plant medicine woman in the Mayan culture. And so part of that's just emerging. And I knew that before I went down to do the ayahuasca, that's one of the reasons I had to do the ayahuasca, so that I would remember my ties to it and how to use it in a very sacred way. So I'm kind of just working with it gently right now, and just with friends. And then eventually, because Colorado is
Colorado
ahead of the game everywhere else, it's something I think I can offer in the future.
Yeah, definitely. What kind of dosage are you working with? Does it vary?
My first dosage was 2.25 of penis envy, which I highly suggest. If anyone wants a strain, that's the strain I would definitely, but you got to be careful with the dosage because it's a pretty powerful one. And then I did a really, really high dose with my girlfriend of B+. We did 5 grams each, and we teched them. So we soaked them in lemon juice before we took them.
Let's go.
And that was a lot. Like I won't do it again, not because I couldn't handle it, but because it defeated the purpose I wanted, which was I wanted to be fully present and processing as I was getting information to be part of the journey. Whereas I felt like I was just a spectator. Like I was given all this all this information, and I know I was being downloaded with a bunch of stuff, but it was so intense that I was like, I don't even know if I'm holding on to any of this. And so, I don't regret it, but it was good because I kind of need to play around with certain things and know what I'm doing before I start working with anyone else. So once I get really comfortable with it more with myself and with some friends, then I'll know that it's time.
Thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Nicole, you've brought up a couple times a couple of your past life experiences. Did you start having those downloads or getting those visions prior to your inner child work, or did that stuff start unfolding after the inner child work?
That's a good question.
Because the reason I asked that, I'm curious if you have to do that inner child work to get to those.
I don't think you have to do the inner child work to get. I think some of us have different contracts and certain things open within each and every one of us. It's different for everyone. I do know that before I'd ever done any inner child work or even known about the inner child, a couple of years before that, I had connected with my guides. And of course, I didn't know who I was really connecting with. I was just kind of tuning into my angelic team. And I was needing a hug. I felt really alone. I was really in a low point in my life, or just, I don't know, maybe it was just the day, but I was like, I really feel alone. I just need to know someone's here for me. So and that was one of my programs too, is I just never felt like anyone had my back. And as I kind of and it's not like me to ask for help or to ask for support. I try to do everything on my own. At least that was my old program. And this particular moment, when I just broke down into tears with no ego, nothing other than just completely bearing my soul and just saying, I need someone. I literally felt angel wings wrap around me. it was so palpable. And I just was, for the second, I was stunned. And then I just burst into tears because I knew, one, I was heard and answered, and that I wasn't alone. And so I had I had that experience before even doing inner child work, but I did start having I had a physical ET experience, like a physical ET vision, after starting my inner child work, where the Pleiadian, well, when I say that, I mean, they came in non-corporeal form in my backyard, the Pleiadians. I was meditating with them that night. And I was, at this point, I was doing close to 2 hours of meditation a day. And again, another point where I felt really low. I had been going through some betrayal. Two people in my life that I thought I could trust and had betrayed me, two separate things. And I just said, I need to know I'm not alone, which is, I think, a very common thing that a lot of people feel as a starseed. And so I finished the meditation and I went downstairs. And at this point, I was visiting my parents at their place that summer. And they were up in bed sleeping. All the lights were out in the house. And I went down there to get water from the water cooler. And in the kitchen, we had sliding doors that were really kind of opened up. And it was a lot of windows down there looking out into the backyard. And we have a big maple tree back there. And as I was pouring water into the glass, I heard, in my mind, look out the window. And I was like, okay. So I was like, okay. So I'm drinking my water and I'm kind of looking out the window and I'm looking at the trees. And I remember looking at the sky and thinking, oh, it'd be so cool if there were like fireflies right now. Like that would just make this whole scene beautiful. And then out of nowhere, this white orb darts out of the maple tree, darts up, darts back down, darts out to the side, darts towards me. And I'm like, I'm paralyzed because I'm like, Nicole, you are seeing this with your physical eyes. When you go to question yourself later, if you actually saw this, remember you saw this. And I had to tell myself that because I knew I was going to second guess it. And it happened it wasn't just like a split second. It was like 30 seconds to a minute. And this orb was like the size, it was between the size of a baseball and a soccer ball. Like it was somewhere in between that size. And it was just the way it moved in and out of the tree. And I knew instantly it was the Pleiadians. They had come to me in non-corporeal form and just letting me know that they're there with me and I'm not alone. So that was really cool.
You had said having a hard time asking for help. And I think that's something I want to kind of press home here to the audience is we've talked about connecting to our guides, connecting to different energies. And it's as simple as asking for the help, right? That's all they need to do. If someone's having trouble or someone's listening to this and saying, what are you talking about? What guides? All they have to do is ask.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to ask and you've got to be open. You got to be open to them communicating with you in any kind of way. I think one of the things that shuts us down is that we think it's going to come in a certain way. But for instance, recently it's interesting. I've had some other weird experiences happening where, when I say weird, I mean things I wasn't expecting from people in my life. Like one's kind of a bit of a betrayal. One's I didn't see it coming. And I was like, what? And each time both of those things happened. So the first time I walked into my bedroom and there was a feather on my bed. And I don't have any kind of feather, I never have feathers. And I'm like, okay. And then after having this meeting with this person where I finally had to end the friendship because this person was just not acting at a level that, I should say, out of behavior that was respectful of anyone that I wanted to be associated with, I walked to my car just completely wow, that was crazy. Almost kind of shaking from the behavior that I saw because it was very manipulative and very narcissistic. And as soon as I got in my car, there was a white feather sitting on the passenger seat. And I'm like, oh. And so that's, you've got to be open to how your guides are going to communicate with you. You might hear a message, you might not hear it, but it comes in your mind. You might get the message through someone in your life who just says the right thing to you, that they're, like, and that's the message from your guides. There's so many different ways, but you've got to be open to receiving it. And that's why, like, numbers and actual signs may have a message, and you've just got to be open to knowing that it's going to be communicated with you in a way, but you have to be willing to see it from all the ways you're not expecting it.
Are being open and being tuned in one and the same?
That's a good question. I think in order to tune in, you do have to be open. I don't think anyone who's closed is really tuning in. They may say they're going to tune in, but I think you need to be open in order to tune in. But I think you don't need to be tuned in to necessarily receive. I think I think being open is the most important part, because you can receive stuff. And I'm wondering if you guys have experienced this. Sometimes something will just come in out of, and I'm doing something completely different, and all of a sudden, like, boom, it's there. And I'm like, whoa. And so I wasn't necessarily tuned in, but I received, and it's because I've been open. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I was just curious, because I feel like, again, like probably like the last 15 years of doing sort of this kind of work, and you get little nuggets from the universe, and what you relay a story to someone, and they might think of it just as like a coincidence, where you're like, no, this is a gift from the universe, or like this is a message. Whereas 20 years ago, you might have gotten that same interaction or that same message, whatever it may be, and you might, well, that's weird. Where did that feather come from? Not being like, oh, that's it. That's, you know what I mean? So that's why I was just curious, because I feel like as I've gotten more into meditation since I first started doing ayahuasca and going on these journeys and stuff, is that the meditation and the journaling and those sorts of things has allowed me to open up to, I guess, receiving certain messages. Whereas maybe in the past, where I would be like, help me, and not, there may have been a guy that was trying to help me, but I'm just oblivious, or it was in my 20s when I was, into debaucherous things, where it just wasn't, they were helping me, but I wasn't
helping myself.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. And I think it's important too, because sometimes you're completely tuned out, but something will just rock your world in a sense of like an experience or something you weren't expecting. Like I hear it all the time. I mean, you guys must be too. I know you've been doing your podcast for a while. Like, people will just have these experiences where one day they're a normal person, and then the next day they're like, what happened to me? And so it's interesting, because I think situations like that are part of your contract. Like, you've got it wired in and detailed into your contract that something like this is going to happen to completely, and it could be that if I don't make this choice or this choice, then this needs to happen to like get my attention, or, like almost like a fail-safe in some ways. Or it could be like, this is how I'm going to really start my awakening to really like get on a different path. Or there's just so many different ways it could be looked at. And I think part of the problem is our human mind is so linear, and we want to focus on one thing, and we think it's only one thing, but really there could be multiple reasons why one thing is happening. And it's so divinely orchestrated and intertwined on levels that our conscious mind cannot even fathom. Like, it's so like our capacity to even fathom it is not even there. So that's why it's so important to be humble on this journey and to know that you really know nothing.
Yeah, and I think it's back to what you said at the beginning of the podcast, is just following the nudge, right? Like, the nudge will take you, and you might not be able to explain it. And, sometimes it's good if you can't explain it, because that's the best thing in life. Sometimes the surprises. Exactly.
I mean, I don't know if either of you are like a control type A person, but I'm a total control type A person. And at the same time, I love surprises, like good surprises, obviously. But at the same time, I'm like, but I need to know. And then I'm like, you're just totally going to ruin the element of the surprise. Like, what? Just allow yourself to be surprised every once in a while. And I think it's just, we always want to know. And I think I've seen this too, like in my own journey and everyone else's. It's like, but I just want to know what's next. But what's next? And it's like, oh, you're not supposed to know what's next. Because if you know what's next, you're not going to get the full breadth of the experience. And you're going to miss what you need to actually receive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the sweet part of life, right? When you can sit back and just enjoy the now and know that it's all going to happen and unfold. Nicole, I could keep on picking your brain on a lot of the stuff we've talked about. We're coming up on an hour and we've got some rapid fire questions for you. But before we get to that, I can't have you on the call and not have you talk about alchemy. You've mentioned it a couple times, being in Denver, always searching for other star seeds and stuff. So tell us about alchemy and what you got going on with that.
Alchemy is my flagship program in my Alchemy Academy. And alchemy is spelt with an M-E at the end, not an M-Y. And it's all about it. Basically, it's just a monthly subscription program where I have quite a few people in there that are basically looking to explore their own journey and also the alchemy of self. I think once we start to bring in the higher self and start to understand the purpose of the ego, we start to go through our own alchemical transformation. And what I wanted to do is help people understand that journey and deepen that for them, but also provide a community where if you feel alone or you don't know who to talk to about all these experiences, which is often the case, like you now are part of a community. I have a private Discord server that we all kind of chat in with tons of different channel topics. And so, you can talk in there. And then I do a live call once a month with everyone. And it's kind of an opportunity for people to get kind of coaching in a group setting. I go over a lot of astrology stuff for the month, just so that we understand how the energies are affecting our lives and what might be coming up for soul lessons. And also just offering, I do guided meditation. So every month you get a guided meditation out of that. So it's interesting because, again, it was one of those things that I just kind of like, I think I got to do something and I'll just create this. And what will I do? And I just kind of started doing it. And then next thing I know, it's like over 3 years in, like 29, I started in 29. Yeah. Over 3 years. And now I've got over 40 meditations created and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I just never knew that was good, what I was going to end up doing. But I think it's important. Again, I just want to say this to, for your audience, that don't worry about having the full plan ahead of you. You just have to start. And when you start, what you're ready for next will show up, and you have to trust that. And that's part of the spiritual journey, is faith. If you don't have faith, you're never going to make it through this journey in the way that will best serve you. It's going to be a lot of fumbling, and it's going to be a lot of difficulties ahead. But when you have faith, which isn't always easy to have in certain moments, but having that faith, you got to lean into the unknown. You got to lean into the areas that you don't know. And there's a lot we don't know. So that's kind of what my alchemy program is all about.
Well, thank you for that. We are two dudes that are trying to build our own, fan base and own community. So I always want to see what other people who are doing it and doing it right, how they did it and how they started. So it's awesome that you have that going on and you're bringing those people together. You had mentioned your live readings. I've been watching them on YouTube when you do them, and I must say you're spot on. Sometimes you really scare me with what you say for like the upcoming week or whatever, because I know what you said the last time. I'm like, oh, I don't really want to go through that again. Like, I'm not ready for this. But no, I really appreciate that too, because sometimes with that stuff, it's kind of, it goes back to having faith and trust. Who's giving you the readings, where you're getting the information from, how they're streamlining, if it's clear what they kind of have and they're coming to the table with. So I really appreciate those and keep those up, because they're really helping for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
With the new moon, is there anything we should be looking out for this evening?
Oh, this is a powerful new moon. This is probably one of the best new moons of the entire year. Like this new moon is about setting intentions for like setting your dreams on fire in the most beautiful way. Like if there's any time to dream bigger than you've ever dreamed before and go for it, it's now. Like these are the seeds you want to be planting. Start like getting ready to take certain actions around that. If you start anything around this time, it's just, oh, there's just so much good energy around it. But basically it's all about setting a new adventure ahead of you, really allowing your soul to guide you to the pinnacle of what your dreams here are. It's an incredible new moon, and I'm so grateful for it coming off of the eclipses we just had, because that was pretty heavy. I know I got blindsided twice through the eclipses, but yeah, this energy it's very expansive. I mean, Jupiter just went direct today, and it's the ruler of this new moon, and it's in Pisces, its other home sign. So it's trining this new moon, which means it's favorably helping this forward action of Pisces rules your dreams, your deep visions for like what you always intended for yourself. It's very deeply spiritual. It's healing. And with this new moon in Sagittarius, it's about like really seeing the big picture, right? Like looking into the horizon, looking beyond the horizon, and just what we just talked about. Like, I can't see it, but I trust it. I'm going to follow it. I'm ready to go on the adventure of my life. And of course, Jupiter just wants to expand everything. So this is the time to grow, to really dream big for yourself. And if there's any kind of new moon rituals that if your audience does or you guys do, like it's the time to do it now.
I put my spring water out for full moons and new moons.
Yeah.
Do you have any that you're doing?
I've already been doing stuff like, so I have a meditation that I just released on my website, and I created it for my alchemy program, but it was super powerful. I was like, no, you got to release it on your website too, for people who are not in alchemy to get it. And it's called your daily dream big manifester mindset ritual. And so everyone in alchemy, we started a 30-day challenge on the 21st, just a couple days ago. Just because the new moon energy start 3 days prior. And I also wanted us to finish the day before the 12/21 portal in December. So we're doing a 30-day challenge where we have to listen to this meditation every morning at minimum, like one time. Of course, you can listen to it as many times as you want throughout the day, but I designed it so that you're ready to finally go after your dreams, that you've got this mindset that there's nothing that can stop you. You're ready to show up for yourself. You're ready to succeed, and you're ready to fulfill your greatness. So that's what I've been doing.
First rapid fire question I have for you is, are you a coffee drinker?
Yes.
How do you brew your coffee, and how do you take it?
I brew my coffee in a mocha, the stovetop mochas. And I always do like a latte or a cappuccino. That's the only way I'll drink my coffee. I don't do drip, which might seem like really snobby. It's not my thing.
Right on.
Do you have a local roaster with particular bean that you go with, or?
No, I mean, I'm just using Illy right now, but I am open to something different, but it's always like an espresso ground. Like, yeah.
Here's one pro tip we have from a former guest. There's a company called Third Wave Water.
Okay.
And what it is there's some sort of World Barista Federation where they have a specific mineral profile that you're supposed to use in coffee houses and stuff. And so Charles Nick, the guy that designed this, he couldn't figure out why couldn't get his home brewed coffee to taste like the coffee shop. And he found out that it was because of the minerals in the water they were using at the coffee shop. So he was a former NASA scientist, and he dehydrated the water profile and put it in a little like sachet, put it in a gallon of distilled water, and then that adds the mineral profile to the water, and then that brings out more of the notes in the coffee.
Really? Oh, okay. I'm gonna look into that. Thank you.
Yeah. So Nicole, I think we've kind of gone through this whole episode, but do you have any daily practices or rituals that you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of yourself?
I go through different phases of different kinds of rituals. It depends on what I'm trying to do. So I think one of the things that people need to understand is that if you're really looking for more enlightenment, then you're going to be wanting to do like more meditation and things like that. or any kind of breath work. Breath work, I think, is important all the time. But right now I'm in a phase of manifesting and I need to show up like every day. And so right now I'm actually showing up and doing the work. I'm allowing for the creative process to show through. Journaling is important. But like one of the things that I am trying to create again is a practice of meditation and breath work that kind of gives back to myself first at the very beginning of the day. And if it means I have to be up at 4:30 in the morning, like in order to get it in, like I'll do that, because I have to take care of me first and I have to set the tone for my day. So that's kind of really important to me. But at the same time, I think whenever you're in a high manifesting period where you're really kind of going after your dreams and you're trying to create something, you've also got to stay grounded and understand the importance of the relationships around you. And so I've surrounded myself with some really key people that are very supportive to everything that I'm doing. And I know I can lean on. And I think having a support system is so important, because if you're someone who definitely tries to do it all your own, like you're not going to get very far. You're going to definitely hit burnout, and who knows, something else could happen. So for me, having that support system and having a few key friends and make sure I'm making time for those relationships and all that I'm doing is also very important.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really good point you bring up. Depending on where you're at in your life is how your ritual or routine goes. I think for the longest time, I used to beat myself up because my ritual would change because my life was changing. But now it's just kind of go with the flow. And if I'm meditating today, I'm meditating today. If not tomorrow, it's not happening.
Yeah. And, when I was kind of going through my really big awakening, 2016, 2017, 2018, I was vegetarian. And now I'm just eating a lot of red meat. And it's because I'm in this manifesting. And I shouldn't say I'm doing it because of that, but I've realized, and I kind of got this download that because I'm trying to ground the energies, I need things that are high protein based. And it doesn't mean like that it has to be meat. But for me, that's what's working for my body. But for any of your audience members, depending on where you're at in your journey, if you're more about like really kind of moving into enlightenment, you need stuff that's going to bring in more light, like vegetables and all that. Or if you're going to manifest, you've got to ground that energy. You got to root it. That's why like a lot of your root chakra stuff is important. And so pulling stuff that's kind of heavier, more dense is actually a good thing when you're trying to manifest.
That's all I eat.
What is it all you eat?
Red meat.
Oh, okay. So yeah. Yeah, you and I could break bread together. We'd be like, cook up a nice ribeye.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you eat any venison or elk?
No, I don't. To be fair, I've never tried it, but I'm pretty sensitive to anything that's kind of gamey. Okay. So I'm always up for trying something once, but yeah, I haven't tried it.
Okay.
Nicole, what are you listening to right now? Music wise, podcasts, audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
Yeah. So podcasts that I'm listening to right now on the regular are Aubrey Marcus, Know Thyself, Ed Milet. I also like and Trent Shelton. And books that I'm reading, I just ordered this book last month on the sexual sacred practices from Egypt, like the ancient sexual sacred. And that's because it came up in my psilocybin journey. And I was shown all this stuff and I was like, oh my gosh. And it's part of the work I'm going to be doing in the future. But yeah, so I'm reading that right now.
What's your go-to music? Do you have a preference or genre?
No, I am so like anything, whatever my mood strikes is what I'll go for. It could be country, it could be dance, EDM, it could be like 50s, it could be jazz, it could be anything. Like it's just really whatever my mood is, that's what I go for.
When you're doing your mushroom experiences, are you going like Terrence McKenna, Dark and Silence all the time, or do you have some music?
Yeah, I have a playlist. Okay. I have a playlist of, let me just pull it up. It's called Mushroom Dreams. And so like Darpan is in there. And then I like to choose a little bit of music it depends on, like, I have more of the softer, slower stuff at the end of my journey, but then I have some of the stuff that's going to really kind of pull me in, or, sometimes there's a voice that speaks to you, because like when I listened to this one on one of my mushroom journeys, I was like, wow, they're right here with me, like it's so incredible, like how you hear music in a completely different way, and how it just moves your body. Like, and when I say moves your body, I mean like your cells, like not like, because I was coma on the, so like I couldn't move, but everything like inside of me was moving. So I've been exploring meditation music that, I started off as a massage therapist and listened to Enya and stuff the first year, and I can't stand that stuff anymore. Like, I just put a gun to my head if I ever have to hear that song. Like, I just can't. So I love listening to music that is a little unexpected. And when I create some of my meditations, I use music that's a little unexpected, but I almost always get a really good feedback. It's not always going to be for everyone, but I get pretty good feedback from that. But I like exploring, like one of the things I released a course earlier this year on how to raise your frequency so high you maintain energetic sovereignty. And I taught people how to get their vibration so high that they're like, it's the excitement level of someone, an athlete who's running into like the football stadium for like the championship, and it's like the Super Bowl or something, and like you're going to go in there and you're going to win. Like there's no other outcome. It's just you're winning. And so you get amped up. And I think we always think about meditation as this peaceful journey, which it has its place. You all absolutely want that. But if you really want to get into a powerful place where you can create anything, get into that place where you're so excited, you're so high on life, like you can do that through music. And so that's sometimes, so I taught people in that course how to utilize the music and the vibration and where your mind needs to go to do that.
What was that one that you mentioned?
Which?
It started with a D, I think.
Oh, Darpan?
Darpan. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah.
It's funny. You just mentioned my morning routine, how I get up for the day. I get up like I'm getting ready for a wrestling match back in the day. That's how I have my best days. I listen to that music to kind of raise that energy and walk into where I gotta go with as much energy and high vibes as I can.
Yeah, it's such a good way to, like, why wouldn't you want to start your day like that? Like it's amazing to start your day high, literally high on life from a natural state of being. Like, I think that's supposed to be our natural state.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with being sad or anything, like it's not that you're not allowed to have those feelings. It's part of the human journey. But if there's any way to start your day, to me, it's like, make it a party.
No doubt. Definitely.
Yeah.
Nicole, last one we got for you. Do you have any guilty pleasures?
Oh gosh, who doesn't? Red wine, chocolate are definitely guilty pleasures. I don't know. Is steak a guilty pleasure? Like, I don't know. I guess
on this podcast.
And like obviously, like I love a good margarita or tequila. I'm trying to think, like anything else. Oh, like this is gonna sound so probably gross to everyone, but I love butter.
Oh, you're in the right place.
Yeah.
We put butter on our steak.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, like I'll eat it with crackers. Like I have this, I don't know if you guys have seen the truffle butter that's out there.
Yeah.
There's like a truffle butter, and you can get it at King Soopers, wherever. And like I'll literally just, how you like might take a cracker and put it through dip, like I'll literally scrape butter and just like eat it.
Sounds like my childhood.
Yeah. Well, that's what I used to do actually in my childhood when we go to steakhouses.
Me too.
You know how they used to serve those butter pats? Like, you take the paper off and it's on this like square piece of paper. And I would literally just sit there and lick the butter off of it. It would drive my parents nuts, but I don't know. I just love butter.
Have you ever tried the combination of dark chocolate and butter?
No, but I will this weekend.
Give that a shot and let us know what you think.
I will.
It's pretty good.
Nicole, thank you so much for your time this evening, and thank you for the work you do. Keep on keeping on. We need more people like you out there spreading the message that you're spreading. Know you're making impact and you're doing good things.
Thank you for having me, guys. Great podcast.
Thanks, and have a wonderful holiday season too.
Yes.
Thank
Happy
you. You
Thanksgiving.
Safe
too.
travels.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night, guys.
Take care.
Take care.